welcoming you to the webinar on what is new in Forecast Pro Unlimited version 8 and Forecast Pro TRAC version 3. I guess most of you are using Forecast Pro, whether you're just about to start or whether some of you have been using for a long period of time. So as you may have been aware through various information emails that we've sent out, that there has been a number of new enhancements coming through. Okay, just firstly about the logistics of the webinar. If you happen to have any questions, there is a box at the bottom which says chat box or send your questions. So please feel free to send your questions using that facility. We will take the questions possibly towards the end of the seminar or at the end of the seminar so that we can carry on. If there are any issues that you have in getting a picture or getting a sound or something, we may or may not be able to help you, but just let us know through that box so somebody can bring it to our attention. But here we go. We basically are now just starting. Okay, so let's go. So I think well, a number of new enhancements have been added and various versions of the software have been released and made available to you. For those who are actually using Forecast Pro Unlimited, the current version of the software is 8.1.1.27. For those who are using Forecast Pro TRAC, the current version is 3.1.1.23. All the new functionality is available in, of course, Forecast Pro TRAC, but some of the functionality is also available in Unlimited. Unlimited, I guess, majority of the people attending today are actually using Forecast Pro TRAC as opposed to Forecast Pro Unlimited. So effectively, for majority of the people, all the functionality is available. Forecast Pro Unlimited does not have certain functionality of Forecast Pro TRAC, and hence certain functionality that has been released since or in the last year is not available for those people using Forecast Pro Unlimited. So if you are not on the current version, just make a note that you can download the latest version. And if you haven't got information about how to download, please send us an email so we can send you that information. Okay, what are some of the things that have been added in the last year? This is not in any particular chronological sequence. Basically, some of the changes have been made. Some of the changes listed here are actually made very, very recently. And some changes pertain right back to the format of the data files that you supply. All data files or previous data file formats will continue to be supported, that the new style data files formats available. There is now an ability to sort input files automatically. Again, we'll explain what it means. And a couple of major ones in the last year, one was interactive event management, where you can enter events directly inside the program without having to actually use an external data file. You can also continue to use external data file for events if you so choose, but you don't have to if you are able to enter events interactively. There has been some an ABC analysis was made available first time for unlimited users. And for the TRAC users, the ABC analysis or Pareto analysis can now be performed, not just on a volume, but also can be performed and any other units of measure that you made available through secondary file. Some other changes with the import modifiers and overrides from Excel. That is possibly one of the oldest change, I guess, and some of you are already using it. New team forecasting functionality has been released in the last year as well, where you can break your forecasting project down into sub projects and then you can consolidate them all into a master project if you like. Apart from, I already mentioned about the value-based ABC analysis available in TRAC. This functionality on this page is available only in Forecast Pro TRAC. And the other functionality available in TRAC only is import of external forecasts, and then you can choose to make any external forecast the baseline forecast in place of statistical forecast. And then you can also import other data into the Forecast Pro worksheet, such as stock on hand, on order, and anything else really that you want. And that gives an added with that functionality and addition of calculations that is possible now in Forecast Pro. You can actually create a lot of calculation and just use Forecast Pro to create your sales and operations planning worksheets if you show this. So we're going to look at this functionality, I guess, and then we basically will, we'll look at this functionality through Forecast Pro, and if you have any questions and later on or now, you can obviously send us an email. Okay, so we're going to start looking at the functionality. First of all, I guess this is the current, this is the program. We're not starting from scratch. We basically have already a forecasting project to do some forecasting. Now, to show some of the functionality, like for example, this new format, that's based on my screen, the Excel's on the worksheet, if you like. The old format, the standard Excel or CSV type format, essentially is this, like a horizontal, where you have one line for each item that you need to forecast, going from with Forecast Pro fields and then sales figures or shipments figure going right across. You can now have a format in Excel or text file which was available previously, by the way, in ODBC type input, where you have database tables to input data from, and that's where effectively one line for each period of data, period item combination for data, if you like. So this sort of format, obviously some of you already have designed your input files and things like that, so maybe you don't necessarily need to change it. For those who actually haven't yet are starting, this format sometimes is maybe easier to work with than the traditional format that I just showed a minute ago. Okay, that's one aspect. I guess the other aspect that is, again, the changes pertain to some of the inputs and how things are handled in the input file. With the latest version, now I must admit the version that I'm actually using is a little bit ahead of the release version. But in this version, you will have, this version is not yet released, but you already have the functionality available in 3.1.1.23 by changing some settings inside the configuration file. But once this version is that I am actually using today is released, you will be able to basically tell Forecast Pro to automatically sort input files. And now this functionality is useful for people like in the past. If you haven't got your input file sorted properly, it will give for you a message that there's duplicate items and Forecast Pro assume this data or makes this assumption about the data and so on. Now you can avoid that by automatically sorting the file, and previously you would have to sort the files in the hierarchical field structure. While we are on these settings, there are a couple of other things which are also available now that wasn't available until the recent version. One of the things that is you can set your trailing blanks to 0. Now this is for the people who actually can't import 0, and they typically have blanks in their data when the sales are 0. So Forecast Pro can automatically now set those trailing blanks to 0 so that it doesn't come up with a message say this looks like a data SKU, which was the message that you would get. There's another small functionality available as well in it was similar vein. If you go to the Advanced Control tab, where you can now actually specify that if you have no sales for a number of periods, which is whatever you want to set, you can basically say that if the item is not sold for last 3 periods or 6 periods or whatever you want to set, it can tell Forecast Pro to automatically forecast 0 for those items going forward. I mean, that's up to you. There are other ways of setting the forecast to 0, but that's one way. Okay, so there are some of the changes that you basically have in the structure of the data file and some of the settings that do certain things. Okay, let's just start by looking at some of the functionality that we put up on the slide up. And first thing I want to look at is how to import overrides and modifiers into Forecast Pro TRAC or Forecast Pro Unlimited for that matter. So it is possible, and I guess some of you are already using it, that if you basically want to import modifiers, and modifiers obviously is anything that Forecast Pro uses, like you can put some lead time by item, you can put, if you like, any other changes that you want to make in the way Forecast Pro forecasts. So you create an Excel file for such modifiers. And then you can go, like once you have a project, you can basically go project, import, modifiers from, and if you are creating an Excel, using an Excel file, you basically use it from Excel. And the way you basically do it, select that particular file where the modifiers are actually stored and simply click on that and open it. Now you can see here that we have a number of modifiers being imported from that file that we just basically read. Now, advantage of this thing is, of course, it gives you an option, because otherwise you can do the same thing by going at a navigator level and put those modifiers one by one. But I think sometimes it's easier if you basically want to import it using those external files. So that's one of the functionality. Now the other functionality that are listed in a similar vein, which has been released for a while, is that you can import any overrides. Now typically to basically make overrides, you basically go into this override grid as such and effectively put overrides manually, or by putting increment or putting a formula or things like that. Now you can bring such overrides from outside. I mean, the advantage of doing that is that suppose you have people who do not have a license for Forecast Pro TRAC or Forecast Pro Unlimited for that matter, and you want their input. So you can actually supply them, if like, some information in Excel and get them to provide their feedback in Excel so that you can import such overrides. Again, to import, you basically, to create this import, you basically have to create a file, which is Excel type file. You can put comments and things like that, and you can put overrides whichever period that you are importing into. And then to import those overrides, again you go to project, import overrides from, and point to the data file. Again, make sure to use Excel if you are using Excel. Point to the data files that you have and just read them. And I guess, I mean, the advantage of this is not, I mean, you can obviously do all those things in Forecast Pro. The advantage of that is just to basically, like, when you have situations where people who don't have access to Forecast Pro, you want them to import, provide the input, you can do so by using Excel. So there's some of the simple functionality that actually have been added, and some of you have been already using them for a while. Now, some of the new functionality, and this one is particularly quite appealing. Now, previously, to provide I guess to put any events such as promotions or stock issues or catalog launch or things of that nature. Until this recent version of Forecast Pro was released, or recent version meaning about 6 months ago, Forecast Pro was released, you would need to create this information in Excel, whereas these days you can basically create this information inside the program as such. Let's look at this for example. Like you can see, like this are a couple of picks in the history here, and we haven't yet told Forecast for what those picks can have come actually from. Let's say they were caused by some promotions that we actually conducted. Now, to provide this input to Forecast Pro without going out of the program, and if you are doing it for the first time, again, you can basically create, firstly, you have to create some event codes that you're going to actually use for event code for such as things like promotions or catalog launch or whatever is applicable in your business. So let's say we create a couple of event code. Let's call one as a promotion. Again, the promotion is a generic term. You can, if you're running different types of promotions, you can create different types of promotional event codes. Let's say another issue is stock issues. I'm not sure whether you have some, but sometimes the stock issues can cause you to not sell as much as you like. So we'll just create a couple of event codes. So we create a master list of events that take place in our business, and then we need to once the codes are created, you can apply these events to specific periods. So like to apply them, you basically right-click on the graph and say Manage Events, and you apply it on the graph itself. So basically identify a period where things have been run. So in this case, let's say I put an event in 2010 December. Let's say it was a promotion type 1. Let's say we ran another promotion type 1 in again in December. So let's say we put a promotion type 1 again in there. So and say we are happy with those things. Now you will notice what happens that when you apply this promotion, this is typical event functionality that you already familiar with. Obviously the green line is the actuals and the red line is the filter line, and red line going forward also is a filter line, which assumes a similar jump in sales in December, because we haven't really told that some of the previous jump in December were caused by promotion. So once we commit to this thing, and once you provide these details for an item, you can save the event schedule. We generally recommend that you give it a name which is meaningful, rather than give it generic name as schedule 1, 2, 3, etc. And we can change the name. Let's say we call it, make a meaningful name so that we immediately know what this is applicable to. You could give it a description if you want to. Okay, so once you do that, it will be immediately see the impact on how it happens, because now we already told Forecast for those picks we had were as a result of promotion. You can see it there. If you put my cursor there, you can see this promotion type 1 was carried out there and also there. And the forecast for December going forward has come down, because now told the previous 2 years they were created by some promotions as opposed to anything else. And as you basically know, I mean, this same thing like in the current version of the software without using Event Manager, or previous version of software rather, you can put events in the future in Excel file. Similarly, you can do it here. You can apply an event indirectly on the graph. And you can say, let's say I want to do the same sort of promotion, but not this time in December, but I want to do it in August. So all I have to do is put in that event and say, all right, I'm going to do exactly the same type of promotion in August, and you will see the impact of sales going forward. Okay, so I guess this is the event management functionality which has been released, and the people who actually have not had events in the past, they find it pretty useful. because you can put those events interactively inside the program without actually having to create an external data file, which we had to do in the past. Okay, so that's some of the functionality. The other things that we're going to talk about is they're possibly available only in Forecast Pro TRAC as opposed to Forecast Pro Unlimited. All the previous functionality that I talked about is available in Forecast Pro Unlimited as well as Forecast Pro TRAC. Now, Forecast Pro, now I mentioned about the ABC analysis or Pareto analysis, which some of you may be using. Now, this functionality without these units, which units you can't supply units inside Forecast Pro Unlimited. So without the units, you can do the same analysis in Forecast Pro Unlimited. But until the most recent release of the software, even in Forecast Pro TRAC, you could only do for ABC analysis or Pareto analysis using the standard units, which is volume. Now you can basically choose any units that you actually have made available through your secondary files. So if I want to do a Pareto analysis using dollars, I simply select dollars. Now you can set some parameters, like, I just won't change them, but you can set the parameters, say A class meaning top 80% by volume and the next meaning 15% by volume. That's typical ABC classification that you do. And you basically say, yeah, that's what you're going to do. So let's say you do the ABC analysis there, and you can bring in those results of the ABC analysis into a number of reports. So typically, a lot of reports have functionality to show ABC classification. So I'll just bring up one of the reports here, which is called item report. And again, of course, most of you know that we can filter this report. So let's say we only want to look at the end items or the bottom levels, because that's where we applied ABC classification. So I want to eliminate anything which is not an end item. So if I do that now, I guess you can see this is the item now. You can see here that this has been ranked according to the dollar value, if you like, by Forecast Pro. And if I want to look at the rank, which is the lowest rank, meaning the highest item. So this particular item consumes 7.68% by volume, or dollar value rather. And again, of course, you choose, I forgot to mention that you can choose in the options. So what do you actually want to use? You want to use forecast going forward, you want to use history, or a combination. So you can use any of these combinations to perform this ABC analysis or Pareto analysis. Pareto typically used to identify your top items so that you can give them more focus in terms of your forecast. So this functionality, this bringing up of this ABC reports or ABC classification, that functionality is available in many of the reports. But this is just one report where you can bring in those classifications so that you can use them to actually review. That's a very quick review. Maybe if you want to go to top items first, then you can quickly go to those items as you move. Okay, so that's there are some of the functions. Now we look at, I find some of the things which have been added in Forecast Pro in the last 12 months. Some of the most exciting things have been added, in my opinion, have been some things to bring in external data and external forecasts and do calculations. This sort of functionality has been demanded by a number of users who basically follow sales and operations planning type of functionality, and typically they would have to actually go outside any program to do some sales and operational type calculations. Some of the things people have always wanted is to say bring in budgets going forward and compare compare forecast versus budgets as well. It wasn't possible until the addition of some of this new functionality that has been released, if you like, in the last possibly 6 to 12 months. To bring in external data, again, you can bring them through, if you like, Excel file. You can bring them also through ODBC tables as well. I'll just show you, it's basically similar sort of format to other files. What I'm looking at here is basically bringing some orders, or orders meaning customer orders in this particular case, that are open. So we do, maybe in a make to stock business, we have orders at any point in time. You want to show them against what we have. You can also bring in stock on hand. And virtually you can bring in any data. There is no limit in terms of what sort of data you can bring in. The interpretation of the data is really up to you. Forecast Pro doesn't really care about what sort of data you bring in. So bring in that sort of data. Again, let's just go to any particular, I mean, you don't have to go to any particular item. We basically know we have created this data. So to import the data, say go to external data from, again, as you can bring in from Modifiers tables as well. So let's say you can bring in external data. And in this case, we go to bring in orders and stock, that open orders and stock that we just saw a minute ago. Okay, this is giving me a warning that there are no values are not available for some item, but that's fair enough. So now you can see here that we have an additional information being displayed against each item where we have that information. Obviously, we may not have that information against each item, so then it will say not applicable. So that's how you can bring in external data. And as I said before, you can bring in any data that you like that is meaningful to you. So if you can bring in some, like for example, if you want to do projected inventory type calculations, you can also bring in your receipt or scheduled receipt or plan orders so that you can do inventory projections here. Again, of course, if you are using MRP, you may not necessarily want to do it, but I guess the scope is there to create those sort of calculations inside Forecast Pro. Okay, so this is the data. Now you can also not only you can bring in, if you like, the stock on hand and orders, or as I say, you can bring in any data that is relevant to your operations. You can bring in also, I guess, external forecast. Now, the purpose of putting this functionality about external forecast is that, this is again, you can bring in through Excel. I'm just using Excel for simplicity. You can also bring in through ODVC tables as well. I mean, the purpose of bringing that sort of external data is for comparison. Like, I mean, in this example, Stuffmart is a customer. And if the customer is supplying you some forecast, then you can basically use the customer forecast as a comparison of compared to what you are forecasting. And B, maybe you have a reason to bring in forecast because the customer basically wants you to use its forecast in place of your statistical forecast. So you can then not only bring in the forecast, but you can then make this forecast as your baseline forecast. Until this functionality was released, you could only do so by bringing such forecasts as overrides. That means they were overriding your original statistical forecast. Whereas the advantage here is that you can bring in, you can still retain the original forecast, and you can then compare when it actually comes to accuracy reporting and things like that. You can then compare the accuracy against not only customer forecast, but the original statistical forecast as well. So there are some possibilities of using this data. So just basically bringing the data in, you do the same thing. Everything that we are importing from outside is available in the menu called Project and Import from Forecast Pro TRAC at the top. So depending upon what you are actually bringing in. So let's say we are bringing forecast. It's not labeled as forecast again, but it's labeled as again external data. So, but this is a question you will be asked. I mean, do you want to delete external data? Obviously, when you are having a separate files for stock on hand and forecast and so on, you do not want to delete external data that is already there. You are adding to the external data. So in this case, let's just bring in the external forecast. Again, some items don't have forecast, so it's actually giving a message. So now you can see here, you have I'll just close this window so you can maybe see it better. You can see here that you have another few lines added. Basically have some management forecast, sales forecast, stuff mark, which is a customer forecast as such. Now I didn't pay particular attention to where I was when I actually started to import this forecast. So as a result of that, I mean, this forecast and some open orders and stock on hand maybe not exactly in a line that I actually would have liked. So to bring them in line, let's say I want to move open orders and stock on hand information at the bottom and leave the forecast information at the top. So the simplest way you can do it, you can highlight this thing in override design and say, fine, I want to move this down until right at the bottom, and I say I want to move that down as well. So again, this is to fine-tune your design. If you're looking at a worksheet and you want a particular way of looking at it, you can change these things. So now you can have a variety of forecasts, this management forecast, sales forecast, stock market, which is your customer forecast. Now you can, you can do some quick comparison between the two by using calculations, which we are going to do in a minute. But before you do that, let's say I want to use, because basically the stock market has stipulated, being a customer, they have stipulated that when it comes to the cakes that they buy, essentially they are basically asking us to use their forecast as the baseline forecast. Maybe sometimes these overrides may be applicable as well, but as a baseline, as a starting point, they want to use their forecast. To be able to do that, you can go to, again, the override design window and go to the tab called baseline forecast. Now you basically then choose that, because you're going to make stuff line forecast, the stock market forecast rather than the baseline forecast, you choose that forecast. Now you can quickly eliminate all the other items by saying I'm only looking at the stock market. If you type in stuff, it will eliminate everything else because there is nothing else as stuff. And let's say I only want to basically do it for cakes, because for muffins they basically say, well, you make a decision yourself. Let's say you want to use it for cakes only, although they supplied as a comparison their forecast. So you choose where you want to make certain things a baseline forecast, and then say, this is the forecast. I want to choose this item, and yes, I basically want to set as a baseline. If there is no value, that means I want to set it to 0. You have an option to set it to 0 or set it to statistical, depending upon how you want to operate. Okay, so let's say once you select that, if I now go to cakes and under stuff mart, you will notice that at the top, now this is basically saying, instead of my statistical forecast for other items, there is a statistical for where I change the baseline, it will show me stock market forecast. Notice also that here I don't currently have my statistical forecast available. Okay, if I want to include statistical forecast in the view, all I need to do is go back here and say, yes, please show statistical forecast as well. Okay, so statistical forecast is now there. And again, because I have highlighted the statistical forecast using a color, that's again you choose in that same override window that you can put a certain color or certain highlighter behind the thing. So basically that is why it is in color. So that's simple. Yes, you can. So if you can bring in external forecast into the equation, you can do various comparisons if you want to against those external forecasts, and then you can change this external forecast, or you can make some of those external forecasts at your discretion as the baseline. And in all reports about accuracy and exceptions and things of that nature, you would have 3 choices. When you want to compare, when you bring to exception or compare accuracy, you have choice of statistical forecast, choice of forecast, meaning the final forecast with override, or choice of baseline as the yardstick against the actuals. So those things have been already added into Forecast Pro as well. Now, what do you do with these things? I mean, effectively, a lot of people, when they bring in such external data, then they want to employ some calculations. And the simplest way to do it is, I mean, you can add certain rows called calculated rows. So let's say I want to add a row which is called calculated row here, and I can call it whatever I like. So I can name it as a comparison. So okay, rather than taking the time here, I'll basically show you already. So you can name it and then apply calculations. I'll just basically use a project which I already created with calculations so that it doesn't take a lot of time to putting this thing in. Okay, so in this one I created, I mean, bring all everything that I was showing to you previously. So I have all the information that have been already imported into this project. And now I basically run a calculation. I say this is a comparison between forecast versus management forecast. Okay, in here you can see when I highlight it right on the bottom left, you can see the formula that I have used is simply a forecast divided by management forecast. That is what I'm showing. I'm showing that as a percentage as opposed to a number. I can also again choose the background color here so that I know what I'm looking at. And I can essentially run that comparison. I mean, basically, once you put the formula in, you basically just copy and paste the formula and just commit there to apply it across board. So I haven't really just used it in this particular line. If I go anywhere, that same formula would have been applied. So essentially that calculation is a calculation for the entire thing is to basically apply a calculation, copy it across to various periods, and then commit so that those calculations are actually applied to everything that you want. These calculations will be also carried forward, and some of the changes that they made recently basically means that those calculations will also be rolled out as well. Like if you add another month, it will be actually rolled out to another month without you having to do anything. When they initially released this calculation functionality, you actually had to do it. Now, what sort of calculations are possible? There are lots of calculations possible in Forecast Pro, and basically if I look at the summary, there is a summary at the bottom. It's a defining. Oops. All right, I don't know what happened. Okay, let me open. Okay, so it's effectively to apply this calculation. I mean, what sort of calculations are possible? These formulas are listed here. It's mainly Excel type calculations. It virtually looks like Excel. There are also, although there are some certain Excel type functionality is not available. You can use any row, statistical forecast, override. With a predefined calculations such as safety stocks are automatically predefined formulas, reorder points, etc., etc. So if those of you are not using it, you may want to visit this functionality if it is useful for your purpose. So again, with addition of this functionality, it's possible that you can develop a lot of sales and operation type worksheet type calculation inside the program as such without having to go outside of it, sort of thing. Okay, now one other function that actually I had mentioned is ability to create a consolidated project. Now, the previous versions of the software had the ability to create consolidated project, but that was done in a very different manner. The new software, the new release, have the ability to create projects, and the way you do it is, let's just let me close the original project that I opened and just work with the new project. So I have basically created some projects, like to create super projects, I created some projects where I am doing some projections or a forecast of various items within a region. So the use of this functionality is that you have various people responsible for some products and you want them to forecast independently, or you have people who are responsible for some regions for the product and you want them to forecast independently. And then at the end of this forecasting process, you want to bring all that functionality into a consolidation at a national level. So you can, if you are responsible for national, you want to review it all before actually you can make certain decisions. So this is an example where I created a project, and I created, I guess, similar projects, if you like, for other regions. So essentially same sort of thing, same products, other region. I mean, products don't have to be same, products can be applied to certain regions. Let's say I want to basically bring them all this into a consolidated project, and I say fine. To do that, I create a new project. I go to manage projects and say I want to basically use these 3 sub-projects, if you like. So I basically select those 3 sub-projects and now say fine, yes, they are all the parts and parcel of my super project as such. And it gives me options of what you want to bring in from this project. Typically, if you want to bring in your modifiers, events, overrides, generally speaking, you may bring in everything, including calculations as well. But if there are occasions where you don't want to bring in certain things from sub-projects, then you have the options to untick those things. So you select the sub-projects that you actually want to consolidate into this master project, and then simply apply. And so it is now actually creating this project. It's reading from all the constituent project. Now, one of the things which happen is that it wants you to save this project immediately. So let's just say, let's call it consolidator or something. All right, and basically asked me to save the project immediately once you actually create it. Now, if you look at that, I look at an item there. Now you can see here, you have these regions. Instead there was only 1 per file. Now I have items by region as such. And I guess obviously for those of you who already are aware of the prior TRAC functionality, once the consolidated project is created, you can easily switch over. Like if I now want to look at all this by region by item, if I want to basically look at if like region by item by region, I can easily do so as well. So that's where now it gives me a total picture of all the regions for a given item. So I can do these things. So this functionality is quite good and is being also used by some of our new users quite well, and that functionality also has made it quite useful for using Forecast Pro. So I guess what I just want to quickly highlight in this afternoon session is the fact that there have been a number of functionality that have been released. Now I guess it's possible that some of you are not using this functionality and some of you basically are happy with what you actually got, but we generally recommend that you look at the functionality because some of that makes it easier for you to work with Forecast Pro on a day-to-day basis sort of thing. So I guess the purpose of this afternoon session was to walk you through some functionality so that you are aware, and maybe if you have further questions or if you want to contact me personally about certain things that you're not sure of, you can. But at this stage, we would like the floor open to questions. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to look at these questions. Do we have any questions? Well, we have a clean sheet. We haven't got any questions. So if you have any questions about any of the functionality that we talked about this afternoon, I left some time here for questions, and that's what I'm trying to do. If you have questions, please send it through. Okay, I guess, I mean, if anybody is sending, if you have got any questions at this point in time, I guess we will finish things early, but I had left some time for questions. It seems that you possibly don't have questions at this point in time. We still, okay, Melanie, have you got any questions? If you are you able to send through the question? Melanie, can you hear me? Okay. Well, I'm sending, okay, I'm getting input from people that there are no questions, so I'm still waiting for a couple of minutes to see whether there are any questions. If there are no questions, then we'll call, and we have an early mark. I'll just wait for a couple of minutes before calling it a mark. If you are sending any questions, I'll just wait to see whether they're actually getting any questions. Okay, I guess, I mean, I just want to basically let you know that this was our first webinar that we actually ran. We haven't ran a webinar, and I sincerely appreciate you attending the webinar. I would also appreciate if you can please, even if you don't have any questions, I will appreciate if you can at least send me a feedback or some sort of feedback by email, so that we know what we can do. If there are certain things that you would like to cover on webinars in future, we would be more than happy to do it if there's a sufficient interest. So, okay, there have not been any questions coming through, so I assume that everybody is happy, or they don't have any question at this point in time. Even if you have questions, please send me an email, and I would sincerely appreciate you can send me some sort of feedback on this first webinar that we actually ran. We hope to continue to run some webinars in future, maybe educational, maybe some case studies or anything of that in the future. But there being no questions at this stage, thank you everyone for attending the webinar, and talk to you in future. So with that note, I'm just going to finish this webinar.